The day my wife went with her guy best friend to meet his parents, I left the divorce papers on the table and walked out. Before I left, I found their hard launch photo on Instagram. Underneath the picture of them smiling, with their caption that read, "We're finally a family," I left a comment. "Come home and sign the divorce papers. Wish you two all the best and a baby soon." A second later, my phone rang. It was Chloe. I stared at her name flashing on the screen, a tiny, foolish flicker of hope stirring in my chest. Maybe our marriage could still be saved. But the voice on the other end was sharp with accusation. "Owen, can you stop being so unreasonable? Leo isn't into women. His family is just pressuring him. So what's the big deal if I go with him to meet his parents to help him out?" I replied calmly, "It's my fault. I'm getting out of the way so you can find someone who isn't unreasonable." That's when she panicked. The day my wife, Chloe Miller, went with her guy best friend to meet his parents, I left the divorce papers and walked away. Before I left, I opened her Instagram. The photo was a declaration. They looked so happy. Chloe's caption was just as blissful. "We're finally a family." I let out a cold laugh and typed my comment. "Come home and sign the divorce papers. Wish you two all the best and a baby soon." A second later, Chloe called. I watched her name flash on the screen and answered, holding on to one last shred of hope. Maybe there was a chance for us. Instead, I was met with her fury. "Owen, can you stop being so unreasonable? Leo isn't into women, and his family is on his case. What's the big deal if I go with him to meet his parents to get them off his back?" "Of course it's fine," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're best friends, after all." She took my tone as an insult, an attack on the pure, platonic bond she shared with Leo. I listened quietly as she tore into me. When she finally ran out of steam, I asked the one question that mattered. "Chloe, do you know what date it is?" She paused. "Huh." My heart turned to ice. All hope vanished. Today was the anniversary of my mother's death. I glanced at the wedding photo on the wall, the only picture of Chloe and me together. In it, she stood a noticeable distance away from me. We looked like strangers, stiff and disconnected, nothing like newlyweds. She had never posted a single picture of me on her Instagram. Her feed was all Leo. I should have understood long ago. Her world revolved around Leo. I was just a ghost who had forced his way in. My silence only made her more impatient. "Owen, what are you trying to say? You know what I hate most about you? This moping, pathetic act. You're nothing like Leo." I cut her off. "It's the anniversary of my mom's death. I thought she might show a hint of remorse." I was wrong. She got angrier. "Did you have to ruin such a happy day with this? It's just an anniversary. Is it that big of a deal? Way to bring everyone down." I felt numb, my chest aching so badly I couldn't breathe. Tears streamed down my face before I even realized I was crying. "It's all my fault," I said, my voice hollow. "I'm sorry for ruining your big day. That's why I'm getting out of the way. You can find someone who isn't unreasonable, someone who respects and understands your special friendship with Leo." I hung up and buried my face in my hands, sobbing. They say a man doesn't cry easily, but I couldn't stop it. I had loved Chloe for 5 years. I had given her everything for 5 years, and every single year, I went to visit my mother's grave alone. For 5 years, I did everything she wanted. She didn't want kids, so I went to a clinic and got a vasectomy. She didn't want to work, so I worked my ass off to give her a comfortable life. I never let my job get in the way of our time together, but 9 times out of 10, I'd come home to a dark, empty house. I was uncomfortable with her friendship with Leo, but I respected her choice. I told myself they were just close, that I shouldn't be suspicious. But reality finally slapped me across the face. She went with him to meet his parents. My last 5 years have been a complete and utter joke. Chloe and I met at the hospital. She was a nurse. My mom had just passed away, and my father couldn't wait to bring his mistress into our home. They already had a child together, only 2 years younger than me. I couldn't stand the sight of their fake little family, so I moved out. I held myself together long enough to arrange my mother's funeral. After it was over, I collapsed. The few people who came to the funeral dropped me off at the ER, assuming my father would come take care of me. When I woke up, I was completely alone. I lay in that sterile room, feeling like the entire world had abandoned me. That night, Chloe had already finished her shift. She was passing by my room when she saw me lying there, looking so lost. She felt sorry for me, so she stayed. I'll never forget the moment she opened the door and smiled at me. She pulled an orange-flavored hard candy from her pocket. From that moment on, she owned my heart. After I was discharged, we exchanged numbers. When I found out she was single, I started pursuing her. My devotion won her over, and she agreed to be my girlfriend. I was ecstatic the day she said yes. To me, Chloe was the angel who had saved me. The next year, She took me home to meet her parents. They were both teachers and seemed to like me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a family again. The third year, we got married. On our wedding day, Leo flew in from overseas to be Chloe's man of honor. I'll admit, seeing him in a suit standing next to Chloe where a maid of honor should have been, I wasn't happy. Seeing my reaction, Chloe got defensive. Leo is my best friend. Of course, he has to be here to witness my most important day. Besides, he's not into women, so what are you so worried about? Who says the honor attendant has to be a woman? I was so desperately in love with her. Seeing her upset, I dropped it. The wedding felt a little strange, but as long as Chloe was happy, that was all that mattered. I thought we would live happily ever after. Leo's return proved how naive I was. He moved back to the States and took up his best friend duties full-time, taking Chloe out shopping and for drinks almost every day. At first, I didn't mind, but as time went on, it started to bother me. Every time I cautiously brought it up, Chloe would get annoyed. Leo and I are just friends. It's a completely platonic relationship. Can't you get your mind out of the gutter? I kept backing down, pushing my boundaries further and further, but she always found a new line to cross. It wasn't just giving Leo a spare key to our house. Now, she was posing as his girlfriend to meet his parents. I left the divorce papers and got out. A few days later, she showed up at my new place, pounding on the door like she'd break it down if I didn't open it. I had no choice. The second I opened the door, she threw the divorce papers in my face. The sharp edge of the paper sliced the corner of my eye, and a drop of blood welled up. Owen, it wasn't a big deal. Are you really going to divorce me over this? She yelled, furious. I just gave a tired, bitter laugh and said nothing. She kept yelling at me, and I couldn't stand to listen anymore. I cut her off. We're divorced. What are you doing here? She softened her expression, gently touching her stomach. I'm pregnant, she said softly. I froze, stunned. Her words were like a bomb going off in the quiet room. I swallowed hard, finding it difficult to speak. Before we got married, I had a vasectomy. She never knew. I was worried she'd feel guilty, so I lied and told her I had a low sperm count. Now, it was her turn to be stunned. Her face hardened into a cold mask. Owen, I never thought you were the kind of person who would say something like that just to avoid your responsibilities. My own expression turned to ice. I looked at her, my disappointment a physical weight in my chest. She said she never knew I was that kind of person, but I never imagined the woman I worshiped could do something like this. I pulled out my phone and brought up the medical record from the procedure. She was finally speechless. I didn't want to talk to her anymore. As I started to close the door, she finally spoke again. Last month, Leo and I got drunk. We made a mistake. That's how this happened. You've had the vasectomy anyway, she continued, a desperate edge to her voice. You could just raise this child as your own. I don't want to get an abortion. Whether you get an abortion or not has nothing to do with me, I said impatiently. We're divorced. Go find her, Leo. She grew frantic. But Leo doesn't like women. I stared at her. She was as beautiful as ever, but in my eyes, her face was hideous. I loved her, yes, but that didn't mean I was going to be the world's biggest fool. I didn't care about the sex itself. To be blunt, if she had been forced, I wouldn't have cared that she'd been with someone else. But this was her choice. I've never bought that we were drunk, and it was a mistake bullshit. Seeing the hopeful look in her eyes, I sighed. Chloe, am I that pathetic to you? You keep saying Leo doesn't like women. I went on, the pieces clicking into place. But now I'm thinking, maybe he doesn't like other women. Maybe you're the only woman he's interested in. We parted on bad terms. I finally finished packing my things and moved them all back to my own small apartment. Out of the blue, Chloe's parents called and asked me to come over for dinner. The thought of their kind, warm faces brought a lump to my throat. After hesitating for a long time, I agreed. I showed up at the Miller's house with 2 bottles of good wine. Mrs. Miller chided me gently. Owen, you're here. That's all that matters. You didn't have to bring anything. Looking at them, my eyes started to burn. Mrs. Miller had already cooked, and the table was covered with all of my favorite dishes. I was deeply touched. The heart that Chloe had shattered felt a little warmer. For a moment, I actually considered staying with Chloe just for the sake of these wonderful parents. But I'm a person too. I have my own feelings, my own thoughts. I couldn't just swallow that kind of humiliation. At the dinner table, Mr. and Mrs. Miller kept putting food on my plate, their eyes filled with sympathy for me. I was overwhelmed with sadness. I shoveled food into my mouth, but tears fell anyway, seasoning the meal with salt. Mr. Miller handed me a tissue. I didn't dare look up at him, afraid of the disappointment I'd see in his eyes. After a long silence, he finally spoke. Chloe came by yesterday. She told us you want a divorce, and that you don't want the baby. His voice was gentle, completely free of blame. Don't say anything just yet. You're a good kid. We've seen how well you've treated Chloe. We're not going to take sides, he continued. Chloe wanted us to talk you out of it, but we want to hear what happened. We want to know what you're thinking. Hearing his words, the tears I'd been holding back streamed down my face. Encouraged by their supportive gazes, I told them everything. Chloe going to meet Leo's parents, her pregnancy, all of it. They had been so good to me, and I couldn't let them be deceived by her. And I couldn't bear to be hurt any more than I already had been. When I finished, both of their faces were grim. Just then, Chloe emerged from her room. She looked at us, her expression just as ugly. Mrs. Miller looked at her daughter in disbelief. Chloe cut her off. Mom, stop. The person I've always loved is Leo. If you two hadn't been so against it back then, I never would have done any of this. I went with Leo to meet his parents just to fulfill a wish I've had for years. Can't you even grant me that one thing? Mrs. Miller clutched her chest, struggling to breathe. After a long moment, Mr. Miller said, Are you talking about in high school when I told you not to date? Your grades were slipping. How could we let you date? And we had no idea the boy you were seeing was Leo. Chloe just snorted and changed the subject. Leo's sick. It's hard to find a kidney donor. Right now, the only person who can save him is Owen. She lifted her chin and looked at me with contempt. Owen, just do this for me. You're the only one who can save Leo now. I remember your mom was a doctor. You should honor her memory and save a life. Her words made me see red. I truly couldn't believe she was this kind of person. Mrs. Miller's breathing grew heavier. Finally, her eyes rolled back as she collapsed. After we got her to the hospital, Chloe, stone-faced, tried to leave. Mr. Miller stopped her. Where are you going? Leo's waiting for me, she said impatiently, her face cold. I need to go take care of him. I looked at Chloe and felt like I was staring at a stranger. Seeing the wounded look in her father's eyes only made her more annoyed. Why are you looking at me like that? You still got your perfect son-in-law, Owen, here, don't you? I can't leave Leo alone. I'm worried. And besides, Mom can't stand the sight of me. I'm afraid if I stay, I'll give her a heart attack. With that, she turned and walked away, ignoring her father's calls. Mr. Miller clutched his chest, clearly devastated by her cruelty. I quickly poured him a glass of water. He looked at me with guilt in his eyes. The divorce is for the best. For the best. You deserve better. His words just left me feeling lost. For 5 years, my entire life had revolved around Chloe. I never looked at another woman. To me, Chloe was the most perfect woman in the world. Beautiful, confident, bold, passionate. I never thought I could love anyone else. My world had only been big enough for her. I figured I'd probably never love again. Loving someone was too exhausting, too painful. Once we confirmed Mrs. Miller was stable, Mr. Miller insisted I go home and get some rest. I wanted to stay, but he was firm. He said they had wronged me and couldn't face me right now. I had no choice but to leave. As I was about to exit the hospital, I saw Chloe and Leo and quickly ducked out of sight. I didn't want to face them, to see the coldness in Chloe's eyes or the triumphant smirk on Leo's face. Not far away, Chloe was carefully helping Leo walk. Seeing how gentle and attentive she was with him, a sour feeling churned in my stomach. She was never like that with me. Even when I had a raging fever once, she just sat calmly on the sidelines. I had always told myself she was just spoiled and didn't know how to take care of people. Seeing this, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. It wasn't that Chloe was spoiled or didn't know how to care for someone. It was that she didn't love me, so she didn't want to. I tried to slip away, but I overheard Leo say to her, Chloe, I really want to be with you forever. Chloe's eyes were red as she cradled his head in her hands. Leo, don't worry, she said, her voice firm. Owen always does what I say. I'll make him give you his kidney. I couldn't help but sneer. I'd rather die than give my kidney to a man like that. I'll never forget the smug, arrogant way he always looked at me. He'd act like a victim, making Chloe think I was bullying him, manipulating her into giving me the silent treatment. They'd often stay out all night together. For the sake of my marriage, I put up with it. But now, not only did she want me to raise another man's child, she wanted me to give that man my kidney? Not a chance in hell. A few feet away, Leo was still talking. Chloe, I'm so cold. I want you to hold me. The words were barely out of his mouth before Chloe pressed her lips to his, pulling him into a tight embrace. I watched them, cold and detached, as they kissed passionately. I figured if Leo told her he wanted to have sex right then and there, she'd only hesitate for a second before taking off her clothes and lying down for him. After all, she was already pregnant with a child. At this point, Nothing she did for him would surprise me. I didn't spare them another glance. I turned and walked away. When I got back to the room, Mr. Miller was awake. We talked for a few minutes, but seeing how exhausted he looked, I left. I had just stepped out of the hospital entrance when I bumped into a young woman. She cried out, holding her head. I apologized immediately. She just waved her hand. It's okay. I wasn't watching where I was going. I looked at the fruit scattered on the ground from her bag and watched as she knelt to pick it up. I quickly went to a nearby fruit stand, bought a large bag of fruit, and handed it to her. Before the girl could say anything, I heard Chloe's furious voice. Owen, what are you doing? Before I could react, she was there, clicking toward us in her high heels. She slapped the girl across the face. How dare you have an affair with my husband? Chloe's voice was loud. Everyone around us turned to stare, then started pointing and whispering about the girl and me. The girl was stunned. She looked at us helplessly, tears welling in her eyes. I sighed again, pulling her behind me and handing her a tissue. Seeing this, Chloe got even angrier. So this is why you wanted to break up with me. You found someone else. She lunged at me, tried to scratch and claw. I grabbed her wrists and pushed her away. Owen, she shrieked. I'm pregnant. At that, the crowd's whispers turned to glares of contempt, all directed at me and the girl. The girl's face was beet red. She clutched the hem of her shirt. I don't know him, but the crowd only believed what they had heard. Looking at Chloe's twisted, hateful face, I finally snapped. Chloe, you know damn well why we broke up. You went with your guy best friend to meet his parents and told me you wanted a divorce. Not only that, you even demanded I give him my kidney. And now, I continued, my voice rising, I have a 2-second conversation with a woman I don't even know, and you attack her like this? What about all the times you chose Leo over me? Did I ever say anything? My words hung in the air. Instantly, the crowd's contemptuous stares shifted to Chloe. Her face flushed with rage. I was done with her. Looking at the red handprint on the girl's cheek, I felt a pang of guilt. I led her back into the hospital. Chloe screamed after us. Owen, you walk away from me now, and we are done. I didn't even turn around. Chloe still didn't get it. I wasn't her lapdog anymore, the one who followed her everywhere. We were already done. The girl's name was Sophie Chun. She was a recent college graduate whose only family was her mother. Sophie's mom had been hospitalized a little while ago, so she'd taken time off to care for her, only to run into this mess. Mrs. Chun was a gentle woman. After she heard the whole story and saw my guilty expression, she comforted me. Young man, while it's true my Sophie got dragged into this because of you, you weren't the cause. This has nothing to do with you. I put the fruit on Mrs. Chin's bedside table and apologized again before leaving. I tried to put the whole thing out of my mind. I spent the night drinking, getting completely wasted. After purging all the pain, I blocked Chloe's number. Mr. and Mrs. Miller didn't contact me again either, though they would occasionally send meals to my apartment via DoorDash. My life finally settled into a quiet routine. I buried myself in work and paid no attention to Chloe's life. I only heard through friends that, in her determination to be with Leo, she had upset her mother so badly that Mrs. Miller had fainted again. Chloe and Leo had knelt by her hospital bed, but before Mrs. Miller could say anything, Leo collapsed. Worried about him, Chloe argued with her parents, causing Mrs. Miller to pass out a second time. After that, they washed their hands of her. Chloe was now happily with Leo. When my friends told me this story, their voices were filled with disapproval. They had been friends with Chloe, too, but they couldn't stand what she had done and had all distanced themselves from her. But Chloe was either oblivious or simply didn't care. Her entire world was Leo. After hearing the news, I ordered several expensive health supplements and had them sent to Mrs. Miller. Chloe was Chloe, but her mom was different. I wouldn't forget Mrs. Miller's kindness to me just because of her daughter, and I wouldn't take my anger out on her. I thought that would be the end of it, but then Chloe appeared in front of me again. She was waiting downstairs from my office, her belly huge, dressed in cheap clothes, her face streaked with tears. I saw her the moment I stepped outside. She was terrifyingly thin. The only part of her that wasn't skeletal was her swollen stomach. It was so round it looked unnatural and frightening. The second she saw me, she lunged, grabbing my sleeve, and tried to pull me away. I stood my ground, and when she couldn't move me, she looked up, her voice pleading. Owen, Leo's had a relapse. Please, you have to save him. I had to admit, in our 5 years together, I had rarely seen her beg like this. The last time was when she begged me for money for Leo. She had been just as desperate then. I didn't know what to say. I just stared at her tear-and-snot-streaked face, feeling absolutely nothing. I think I had finally stopped loving her. When I didn't respond, she cried even harder, finally dropping to her knees and clinging to my leg. Passers-by started to stop and stare. "Owen, it's a human life we're talking about," she wailed. As the crowd started murmuring, calling me heartless, Chloe, still clutching my leg, allowed a small, triumphant smile to curve her lips. Just as I was being judged by a crowd of strangers, a voice cut through the noise. "He's a living, breathing person, not a tool for your moral blackmail. The Leo you're talking about broke Owen's heart. How can you ask him to repay cruelty with kindness?" It was Sophie. Her face was flushed with anger. She stood beside me, shielding me from most of the stares. "I know a life is on the line, but you have no idea what they did to Owen. Why should he be morally blackmailed into this?" The crowd wasn't convinced. They echoed Chloe's pleas. It was a human life, after all. I pulled Chloe's hands off me. Under a desperate gaze, I spoke calmly. "If Leo hadn't done anything, I would save him. But Chloe, he's your guy best friend. You two were in love behind my back. You met his parents, you're carrying his child. I'm not a saint. I can't save him." At my words, the crowd fell silent. After a long moment, one person walked away, then a second, and a third. Soon, they were all gone. It was just the three of us. Chloe sobbed in despair. I didn't pay her any more attention. I started to walk away with Sophie. From behind us, Chloe suddenly called out, "Owen, if you save Leo, I'll get rid of the baby. We can get married again." I stopped in my tracks, stunned. Seeing me hesitate, a flicker of a smile crossed Chloe's face. She scrambled up from the ground and stood in front of me. "I swear, I'll never speak to Leo again. I'll be a good wife to you." I snapped out of my daze. I looked at the complicated expression on her face, a mixture of reluctance and noble sacrifice, and couldn't help but laugh mockingly. "Chloe, I never cared that you were friends with Leo. I was even willing to forgive him for you, but you never once considered my feelings. You always stood by his side without a second thought. You know what? I think you're disgusting." My words hit her like a physical blow. The color drained from her face. She swayed on her feet, staring at me with wounded eyes. I took Sophie's hand and walked away, feeling a strange sense of release. The internet was right. Trying to be reasonable is pointless. Sometimes you just have to let the anger out. Over the next few days, Chloe kept trying to harass me, begging me to donate my kidney to Leo. But every time, Sophie would appear and chase her off with a sharp tongue. The way Chloe looked at us grew stranger and stranger. One day, she didn't run from Sophie's tirade. Instead, she frowned, looking at me as if I were a cheating husband. "Owen, you don't love me anymore? You love her? This little girl?" At that, Sophie laughed. "Lady, after everything you've done to him, it's pretty normal that he doesn't love you anymore, don't you think? And yeah, I might be a little girl, but at least I don't have a guy best friend I'm having a baby with." I looked at the sharp, witty Sophie, and a warmth spread through my chest. So this is what it felt like to have someone defend you. Sophie noticed me looking. She shot me a sweet smile. Our shared glance seemed to push Chloe over the edge. She grabbed her hair and screamed, "Owen, I forbid you to love her." Looking at the unhinged woman in front of me, I was suddenly reminded of a time before all this, when Chloe would playfully command me not to do this or that. I was so in love with her back then that I'd obey her every whim without question. But now, I shook my head, clearing the unwelcome memory. Just then, Mrs. Miller appeared, grabbing Chloe's arm, her face wet with tears. "Chloe, I'm begging you, please stop bothering Owen. I'll give you money to find another donor. Owen doesn't owe you or Leo anything. He doesn't deserve to be treated like this by you." Chloe stared at her mother, her expression dazed, then twisted into a snarl. "Mom, are you taking their side too?" Mrs. Miller just cried, trying to pull her away, but Chloe, with a sudden burst of strength, shoved her mother. Caught off guard, Mrs. Miller stumbled backward, her head hitting the corner of a concrete planter with a sickening crack. Blood began to flow immediately. Sophie gasped and quickly dialed 911. Chloe just stood there, staring at her hands in horror, muttering, "I didn't push her that hard. How did she fall like that?" By the time Sophie and I got Mrs. Miller to the hospital, Chloe was gone. Not long after, Mr. Miller rushed in. The moment he saw me, his knees buckled and he almost fell. I hadn't seen him in a while. Like his wife, his hair had turned mostly white and his once straight back was now slightly stooped. He gripped my hand, tears streaming down his face as he cursed Chloe's name. Thankfully, Mrs. Miller's injury wasn't critical. The doctor said she just needed to rest and avoid any more stress. We stood in silence, looking at her lying in the hospital bed. Mr. Miller held her hand, sighing over and over. Finally, he said, "Owen, I'm going to take your aunt traveling. We're done with all this. When we get old and can't move around anymore, we'll find a place in the countryside, buy a little house. Get a dog." I didn't know what to say. Looking at his exhausted eyes, my heart ached for him. Mr. Miller moved fast. He sold their house. As soon as Mrs. Miller was well enough, they left on their trip. Sophie and I saw them off at the airport. Before they left, Mrs. Miller grabbed both our hands, looking at us earnestly. "Owen, Sophie is a good girl. You two should be together." Then she turned to Sophie. "Sophie, Owen has been like a son to us since he was young. He's been through so much. He's a good man. You two take care of each other." I was about to clarify that Sophie and I were just friends, but she beat me to it. "Don't worry, Mrs. Miller. I'll protect Owen. I'll take good care of him and won't let anyone hurt him again." Sophie's words touched me, but also made me feel a little awkward. After Chloe, the thought of loving someone again felt exhausting. I didn't think I had the courage for it. We watched them disappear through security. Turning to me, Sophie's eyes were sparkling. I was at a loss for words. She tilted her head and gave me a playful wink. "I know you don't like me like that right now, but that doesn't stop me from liking you. Life's too short. I'll do my thing, and you take your time to heal." Before I could respond, Sophie clapped her hands together and announced she wanted hot pot. I was going to take her to a restaurant, but she insisted she wanted to make it at home. So I took her grocery shopping, and we returned to my apartment with bags full of food. Sophie pushed me onto the sofa, rolled up her sleeves, and started prepping the ingredients. I watched her bustling around in my kitchen, and a strange feeling filled my chest, like something that had been empty was now full. I rolled up my own sleeves and went to help her. Sophie was surprised. "Wow, Owen, you're a really good cook." I smiled faintly. Chloe never liked takeout, so I learned. The mention of her name cast a slight shadow over the mood. I glanced nervously at Sophie, but her expression didn't change. She just stayed by my side, praising my cooking skills. We were having a great time eating when the doorbell rang. Sophie went to get it. It was Chloe. Her face was a thundercloud. When she saw the hot pot spread on our table, her expression turned even darker. "What are you doing here?" I asked. Her eyes reddened. "Am I not even allowed to come see you anymore?" Sophie scoffed. "You're that pregnant, and you're still running around everywhere. What if something happens and you blame Owen for it? Besides, there's nothing for you to see. Owen has nothing to do with you anymore." Chloe bristled. "Who the hell are you? Stay out of my business with Owen." Sophie put her hands on her hips. "I'm his girlfriend. So yeah, I think I can." Chloe stared at me, shocked, her lips trembling. "Impossible," she muttered. I moved to stand beside Sophie, putting my arm around her waist. At that, Chloe stumbled back a few steps. How could you love someone else?" Seeing her like this, I was growing impatient. Sensing my annoyance, Chloe finally, timidly, asked about her parents. Sophie let out a cold laugh. "They went traveling. If they stayed here any longer, their ungrateful daughter might have actually killed them with stress." After Chloe left my apartment that day, looking completely devastated, I didn't hear much about her. My friends all knew I had a girlfriend now, so no one brought her up. They insisted on taking me and Sophie out to dinner, and seeing how poised and wonderful Sophie was, they all gave us their blessings. Eventually, Sophie and I really did get together. She moved in with me. One day, while we were organizing some things, my phone rang. It was Chloe. I wasn't going to answer, but Sophie snatched the phone from my hand and picked up. Before either of us could say anything, Chloe's frantic voice came through the speaker. "Owen, help me. Leo's gone crazy. He's trying to sell me." Sophie, who normally did nothing but argue with Chloe, who hated her, had her expression change in an instant. Before I could even process what was happening, she had her own phone out and was dialing 911. She spoke calmly into my phone, reassuring Chloe that we were calling the police and would be there soon. Hearing Sophie's voice seemed to calm Chloe down. But when the police traced Chloe's location, they found nothing. Sophie and I gave our statement to the station. She didn't say a word, but I knew she was worried about Chloe, and worried about how I was handling all this. When we got back to my apartment, two unexpected people were waiting for us. It was Leo and Chloe. They were working together. It had all been a trap. Leo was holding a knife, the tip pressed against my temple. Chloe had tied Sophie to a chair and was slapping her across the face. "You bitch, I'll teach you to steal Owen from me." Leo, looking bored, told Chloe to go search the apartment for valuables. I looked at him. "You were never sick, were you? You don't need a kidney." He grinned. "Of course not. But your kidney is a perfect match for Mr. Henderson's kid. You just be a good boy and donate it, and your little girlfriend here won't have to suffer too much." I laughed bitterly. I looked at Sophie, overwhelmed with guilt. I had been so careless. I changed the security code on my door, but Chloe had guessed a new one. While Chloe was ransacking the place upstairs, Leo efficiently tied me up. Then he pulled out a syringe and injected something into his own arm. I watched as a wave of euphoria washed over his face. He reached out and stroked Sophie's cheek. She bit his hand. He kicked her viciously in retaliation. "Owen, I really envy you," he said, his voice dreamy. "First, you had a beauty like Chloe, and now this little spitfire. You got all the luck." My mind raced with panic. I started cursing him out, throwing every insult I could think of at him. He just laughed and slapped me across the face. "Chloe is so stupid," he sneered. "She actually thought I was her friend. Ha ha ha. If I didn't want to sleep with her, why would I ever get close to her? I loved watching her fight with you for my sake." I saw Chloe standing at the top of the stairs. Her face was a mask of horror. I decided to press him. "Why would you lie to her like that? She really thought you were her friend." Leo's face twisted into a grotesque smile. "Who wants to be friends with her? God, you should be thanking me, bro. I saved you from a lifetime of being cheated on. But I gotta say, Chloe is amazing in bed." I feigned curiosity to sell my kidney. But Chloe, in her stupidity, had posted that picture on Instagram, and I found out. After the plan fell apart, he tried to drain her parents dry, but Mr. Miller saw right through him and left with all their money. Desperate, Leo had resorted to selling Chloe herself. He bragged about it all, relentlessly demeaning Chloe. She moved silently behind him, raised a heavy vase, and brought it down on his head with all her might. At that exact moment, the front door burst open, and the police swarmed in. Leo was unconscious on the floor. Chloe had collapsed, blood pooling between her legs. She was going to labor. After Sophie and I gave her statements, an officer told us Chloe wanted to see me. On the way to the hospital, I asked him what would happen to her. He was quiet for a moment. They found traces of drugs in her system. She was an accomplice. She's likely looking at prison time. If you two are willing to provide a statement of leniency, probably around 5 years. When we arrived at the hospital, Chloe was sitting up in bed, cradling a baby girl, a look of pure love on her face. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. "Oh, and you came. Look at her daughter. Isn't she beautiful?" Then she saw Sophie standing beside me, and her expression contorted with rage. "Owen, how could you leave me? How could you fall in love with someone else?" She clutched the baby so tightly that it cried out in pain. Chloe's focus snapped back to me, and tears began to fall. "Owen, I regret everything. Can we please go back to how things were?" I sighed. "Sophie and I talked about it. We don't want to cause your parents any more pain, so we've decided to write a letter of leniency. We're not forgiving you. We're doing this for them because they're good people. Chloe," I said gently, "you need to take a long, hard look at yourself." Hearing this, her face changed. A deep-seated resentment filled her eyes. "It's all my fault. No, it's Leo's fault for tempting me. It's this bastard child's fault. If none of this existed, if Sophie died and Leo died and this little bastard died, you would come back to me. You would." She suddenly scrambled onto the windowsill, holding the baby high above her head, and threw it to the ground below. Sophie, the police officer, and I were all too slow to react. We could only watch in horror as the tiny body hit the pavement. The crying was cut short. Chloe had gone completely insane. In the end, Leo was convicted of aggravated assault, extortion, drug-facilitated sexual assault, and drug trafficking, among other charges. He was sentenced to death. Chloe was convicted of assault, first-degree murder, and other crimes, and sentenced to life in prison. However, a psychiatric evaluation determined she was criminally insane. She was committed to a high-security psychiatric hospital. After the verdict came down, I sat on my balcony, phone in hand, thinking about Mr. and Mrs. Miller, who were still traveling. A bitter taste filled my mouth. Sophie sat quietly beside me. Before I could work up the courage to call them, they sent me a video request. On the screen, Mrs. Miller looked healthy and tan. They were at the beach. Seeing them so happy and carefree made it even harder to speak. Mr. Miller looked at me and smiled faintly. "We know about Chloe," he said. I was stunned. Their smiles were a little forced, but mostly they seemed at peace. "We still have a few connections back in Denver. We know everything." As a teacher, he continued, "I taught class after class of students, but I could never teach my own daughter. But is that our fault? I don't think so. Our students, they're good people. Honest, kind, smart. They're like you, Owen. It's heartbreaking, but we've made our peace with it. When we get old and can't travel anymore, will you come visit two old fossils like us?" As for Chloe, Mrs. Miller took over, her smile as kind and loving as it was the first day I stepped into her home. "Let her be. We don't have a daughter named Chloe anymore, but we still have you. But don't worry, we won't be a burden. At that, I broke down completely. How could you ever be a burden? If it weren't for you, I might have died at the hands of Leo and his family years ago. Later, Mr. and Mrs. Miller returned to Denver 3 times. The first was for my wedding to Sophie. We had a ceremony that blended our traditions. We paid our respects to Sophie's mom, and then we knelt before Mr. and Mrs. Miller. The second was when our child was born. They came back to meet their grandchild. The third time was the day our child learned to speak. They had returned to handle some affairs when our little one toddled over, hugged their legs, and said, "Grandpa, Grandma." They never left again. They stayed. I took them to the psychiatric hospital once to see Chloe. She was in her room, so thin she was just bones. The moment Mrs. Miller saw her, she started to cry. Mr. Miller was just as heartbroken. But Chloe only glanced at us before turning her attention back to the pillow in her arms. "Owen," she whispered, "the baby's hungry. You need to make it something to eat." She carefully set the pillow down, then reached her hand out toward an empty corner of the room. "Why are you all alone? Where's your family? Here, have a candy. Eating candy makes the bitterness go away. I'll stay with you," she murmured to the empty space. "You can sleep now."